All right, we are live. Welcome. This is Orion Rising. I am your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into this show. All right, share this out. It's Friday night, Law of One. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Let me get this overlay off so you guys can see my face, my ugly mug here, right? Let me get that down. Put myself up in full screen. Share this out. Well, I almost removed myself from the studio. I had the cord for my mouse in the wrong place, and it kept pushing my mouse. And I kept thinking, why is the mouse rolling down the screen? It was because it was pushing. I had it up against the books behind me, not bookcase, books behind which I have the camera stacked on, and it was pushing the mouse away towards me. That was hilarious. Okay, so we're on session 54, I think. I was going to start where we left off. We left off at like question 2 or 3, but I'm going to start over just because of what they were talking about. I was going over it. And Denise, welcome. Penny, welcome. If you're out there in the audience and you don't say hello in the chat, which is now on Orion Rising, so all the chats will actually come in here with shared out. Whenever I share it to my page, then none of the other chats, when they're shared out, comes into in fact, it was having a hard time coming into StreamYard last week at all. So now, Anna, welcome. Now I have it set up the right way and shared to the right place so that I don't have to worry about that. Okay, so we'll start right at the beginning of session 54 and move on from there, right? I don't know what's going on in the world that's worth talking about. Oh, actually, because was it Penny was it you that shared that over in the chat group, that thing about the flower of life in the chat? I think it was Penny. I'm going to look right now to see if that was who that was. I was just looking at that earlier today, and yeah, it was, right. Yeah, Penny, you shared that. It's refreshing to see people talking about the flower of life and the energies of the universe being masculine and feminine, because as a physicist, now I don't have a doctorate degree. I got out of that when I realized the government was trying to get me to give them information so they could get patents and steal everything, to put everything into money-making schemes. Sorry, my phone's ringing, and it might even be my publisher, but they're going to have to leave a message now. Calling me at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon or 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday, but they don't know that I have a class that I do, a podcast that I do. So, but I think I recognize the phone number, and it's probably my publisher. I'll have to take a look, and they'll be gone for the weekend probably by the time we get off here. So I'm not going to worry about it. We'll figure that out. Okay, I'll just listen to the message at some point. Okay, so nobody in physics was talking about in any way for my entire lifetime the energies of the universe or anything to dealing with physics being masculine and feminine. And no one has still talked about, only I saw a little bit mentioned by Terrence Howard about fractals and non-fractals when it comes to masculine and feminine energies. Because the fractals are the spirals. That's the feminine energy, and science never saw those until computers were able to render that. And then everybody was going absolutely bonkers over fractals for the last, I don't know, I guess when they really hit the internet about 5 or 7 years ago. But the computers had already thrown those out and spat those out at people like 15 years ago, but it was in the science community, and they weren't even then, because to make the correlation of masculine and feminine energy then reiterates the duality of the universe itself and quite possibly the creator as well. And that goes against the orthodoxy of all religion on the earth. So therefore they couldn't do that. And literally, if they would have said this 5,000 years ago, they would have been executed for that. So even they were afraid to say it. But then again, they also believed, like Pythagoras believed, that the world was flat. So they were looking at a 2D rendering anyways and applying it to their thing. But I don't believe that they were unaware of it. Okay, and if you watch that video in the Law of One chat that Penny linked earlier today, only it's just there right now. If you're in the chat, you can just scroll up a little bit past us talking in the last 20 minutes and see the video. And they talk about people going down the road, but they show how Pythagoras and these other people got to the lines and called that the masculine, and then they projected that, because you have to remember the Greeks had a masculine dominated religions where the gods were men. There were women, but the gods were in charge. The men were in charge of the gods, not the feminine, not the women. The Romans were the same way. So were the Egyptians. All the male deities, so they're male dominated religions and warlike cultures. Okay, the ones that dominated the last 20,000 years, definitely the last 12,000 years on this earth. Christianity being one of them. It's also a male-dominated religion, monotheistic male-dominated religion, and then Jesus it being the son, which is more important than Mary or Mary Magdalene, the mother or the wife. But they don't even want to admit that. That's how much they diminished the feminine. They went so far as in the 800s to call Mary Magdalene a whore. She was a harlot, a whore, literally, that he met at a brothel, and that she was all possessed and crazy. And then that kind of is inferred in the television show, The Chosen, but they don't show her being a whore or doing harlot things, other than being free thinking, outspoken, and then also possibly possessed by evil spirits and going through that problem. But they don't talk about, nor do they infer, that she was having sex with everybody for money. But they kind of inferred it just a bit. And I think that was done by the creators of the show just to not alienate the church, because if you didn't use that rhetoric, it was bad enough that they tried to block that television show from ever being made or aired on television anywhere in the world, and especially in the United States. And that company, Angel Studios, of course, they went after them when the Jim Caviezel movie came out, when they tried to put the movie out as well about child trafficking. And a man from Secret Service retired from the United States military government that was trying to help solve this problem and brought it to light to the world, and they filmed his story. And Jim Caviezel plays that man. It's a true story. So if you ever see that movie, I don't remember the name of it, so don't get mad at me for not remembering the name of it, but you can look up Angel Studios and see that. So I think that they threw a bone in there just to get around censors, because they didn't outright say in any way in the script. I paid a lot of attention to that, especially when they introduced to the Mary Magdalene character and what she was going through, and the Nicodemus stuff, and all of everything that was going on, and up to and including Jesus coming to her and everything else in the first couple of seasons that I've seen. And I made sure to see that. Never did they call her an unclean harlot in any way. So it was just that she was possessed and she drank a lot and maybe caroused. And that was kind of backhandedly inferred that she may have had a little bit of sex, but not that she was getting paid money for it, or that she was being taken advantage of because people were afraid of her. But they never get into the details of what caused her to be that way. They kind of infer that she was raped and that she had a hard life, but not that she was a whore. So I like that they did that, because then what it does is it draws a little bit of conclusion for anybody who wants to see what they want to see when it comes to that. I forgot what they called it. I was just watching the Da Vinci Code last night. I watched the first hour and a half of it last night and got to that place in the movie when they're talking to Lee Teabing, which is an anagram for one of the guys who wrote Holy Blood, Holy Grail, by the way. You should look that up. You should look up the interview with Dan Brown about that entire endeavor and all the books that he read that he based that book of his on, that What If book of his on, that became the movie that Tom Hanks was in. And in that scene, he says what the name of it is, opnoma or something close to that. It means the mind sees what your brain wants it to see. And I think that's why they did that in the movie. Now, why is any of that important? You'll see as we start getting into the Law of One here, and this is where I'm going to go back to the masculine and feminine energies, that literally no one in history, I've been doing this for more than 35 years. I've been teaching spirituality and teaching paganism, teaching Christianity, teaching Druidism for a very, very long time. I've had these titles. The Druid title, I was 19 when I got it, and I'm 36. I'm 56, not 36, I'm 56. No one would believe me. I would say I'm 36 with this white hair. And in science didn't talk about that. Western spirituality and religion didn't either. That's an Eastern philosophical thought that they held on to, not saying that they invented it, but they held on to it because of what they knew and what they found thousands of years ago, and they refused to let the West dictate to them and corrupt them in the way to get what they did to the most of the religions on this earth, but for their power to solidify their power and control over the people. So like Taoism and Buddhism are still considered a fringe religion. And then if you look at the Viking religions, the pagan Viking religions, you'll see the same dynamic. It's just that the modern society, whenever they make Viking movies, they center on only the men and the masculine and the warlike aspect of that entire culture. And that was completely only half of the culture. Women were equal to men, not subservient in any way. They were equal. They had equal say. They didn't have arranged marriages unless they arranged it. They could marry who they wanted to marry. They fought in combat next to men. You can look this up in actual history and see this to be true. As the religion was taken over by Christianity, they converted everybody to a masculine, warlike, macho attitude. They did the same thing with the Hispanics around the world, in Spain and all of the Americas. They did the same thing. And because if you look at the Incans and the Mayans, some of those religions, the Incans, Mayans, and the Aztecs, some of those were very dualistic as well. You look at Egypt, they were dualistic until they weren't. So history remembers them in a warlike fashion with male-dominated deities. But if you look at Egypt, you had Cleopatra was in charge. Nefertiti was in charge. They were pharaohs. How is that possible if it was a fiefdom to men? The same thing goes with the Vikings. Why is it that there are Viking women that are in charge? One, I forget her name right now, and she sacked London. She brought the literally the Romans and the Woads, the English, to their knees. She ended up failing because they were better tacticians than she was, and they were able to outwit her. And then she failed, and then they ended up executing her. But she almost took them over. Had she been a little bit more of a tactician than she was, a military tactician, she would have recognized what was happening and probably been able to beat them. She had them on their heels, literally sacked London and was burning London to the ground. But she stopped because her advisors were like, well, we can get money out of them. They'll pay us to stop. And that was the time that they needed. So I think that was part of a infiltration. Was the time they needed to rearm themselves and surround her and then eventually kill her. So that was a tactician problem, but that's a woman, a female, who united these Southern Viking clans, and because she was mad at them. And you guys should look up the history of that. In history, they do that all the time. They take away, this is my point, they're taking away the feminine. They do the same thing with pirates. You don't know the names like Mistress Chang. You don't know the names like Anne Bonny. You don't know these women's names. Those two women alone were both captains, by the way, and they were more successful than any other pirate in the history of our Earth. Just Anne Bonny and Mistress Chang. Mistress Chang, who was Chinese, who you hear her mentioned and you see her in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, but they don't talk about how important she was. She is in history the most successful pirate in the history of this planet, in what we know from history and pirating. So since the year like 400 until now, no pirate in the history of the world has been more successful than Mistress Chang. 99% of you are hearing that name for the very first time, unless you watched the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and you were like, yeah, that was that Chinese woman that on there that had way too much makeup on her face. And that's all you know about her. And most people think that movie was fake anyway, when all of the pirates that were in there, except for Jack Sparrow and the main antagonists, Jack Sparrow and Barbossa, everyone else is real people in history. And the flags you see flying on everyone's ships are the real flags that those real pirates flew in real history. And all the pirate lords were actual pirates in history. You can look up every one of them. You can look up every name from every single character in that movie and find out they really lived. They all didn't live at the same time like that, to where they had this, pirate cove. But they did have Warsaw, which was an island that the pirates owned, that they still own to this day. It's still not owned by any governmental system from Europe that owns all of the land and most of the world. No Spanish owner, no French owner, and no American owner, and no English owner, which those four nations own pretty much all the islands in most of the planet. Okay. And all of the Caribbean. And, the Dutch and a few others are involved in that as well. But Warsaw is still there, and you can go today and see all this piratey stuff and all the people buried. Okay, so why is that important? That's important because in physics, they've been dominated by warlike religions and masculinity for thousands of years, and no one has mentioned the feminine energy. In fact, if I say Kundalini, you think energy that is the energy of your body. And some of you who know the religion will go, that's a dual aspect energy. Some of you know that the Kundalini, that name, is masculine. The other half of the energy that makes up that Kundalini that we use as a generic term is the Kunda buffer energy. Kunda buffer is the feminine version of those two snakes that are going up your spine. The two, the Celtic knotwork, which is always two. That is what that represents in the Celtic, all of the Viking religions. That dual aspect, those two energies intertwined, is the Kundalini energy and the Kunda buffer, the male and the female. So it's there, and I know this because I'm talking about it in my book that's going to be coming out. And if that was my publisher, then they were talking about that. I'll get to them later today or tomorrow. And so it's been in the spirituality, and that was what was erased. And science has eradicated that and never talked about it. Now, because I've been looking for it always, because I talk about it and I have talked about it and I've taught it, and people look at me like I'm a purple or blue or green. And you see Terrence Howard openly say it and talk about feminine energy. And then all of a sudden, everybody is out there making videos talking about masculine and feminine energy, like as if they knew it the whole time, but none of them have been publishing and talking about this. I know this because I have been actively trying to find this in the academic community, and people were just, there is nothing to do with spirituality involved or God for that matter, or the creator of the universe, because the universe just is. It happened on its own. It has nothing to do with anything that is in any way sentient. And therefore, there is no masculine and feminine numbers or energy or anything. There just is. And that has been, and I'm not saying that that's nobody ever, because you're finding, I just sent a video in the chat, in the Orion or the Law of One chat, showing one guy who has a book, and he talks about it. And he's trying to get a hold of, like I am trying to get a hold of Terrence Howard to talk to him about it, because he has theories about the masculine and feminine energy. So that we're out there, but mainstream academia won't have anything to do with it, and refuse to forever. But and this is, I'm showing you this because just Terrence Howard having the platform on Joe Rogan's podcast and saying what he's saying, and then putting his website out there for anyone to look at and read and get his information. And literally the academic community around the world knows what he's saying is not, they try to dispute him and say there is no empirical evidence about anything that he's saying. The truth is, all of science is now discussing and talking about what he's talking about, and not in the light of that man's crazy and we need to dismiss him. Okay? So just by him announcing what he did, they know what I knew. When I watched it, I was like, this is groundbreaking. Joe Rogan said that. This could change the face of reality and the universe. Yes. because he said what some of us knew, and he had a platform to be able to put it out there to the world. I say it on my show, and I don't have that platform that's going out to 100 million people. I'm going to get 3 million views in the first day. Do you see? But Joe Rogan has that platform. And then when you have somebody that has the voice recognition, the face recognition of Terrence Howard, because people have seen him on television and on stage and things like that, he's able to say this, and his numbers are real, his facts are real, and his theories are sound. And that's why there's some people that are going to just go, nope, he's an idiot. And that's what happens always in science, always. Literally, Socrates said the world is not flat, it's round. And they were like, to the death, you die. Okay, so you have to remember that what's going on. Now, I saw that video. I don't know who that person is, and I haven't researched them. That Penny posted the video, but they're talking about Terrence Howard, but they're also talking as if they already knew all of this, and they're like, yeah, so there's this feminine aspect of the thing. And I'm like, where were you 3 weeks ago? Where were you with this video? And of course, they're on a platform that I can't tell when the video was put out. So I'm going to have to go try and look at their video, but I would wager that video has come out since then. Not that there's anything wrong with that, because people are getting on board with it. The idea, they're actually opening and expanding their mind enough to go down that road. I tell you all of this because we're about to get into a dual aspect discussion in the Law of One about the universe, and in a way that is both in the physical and in the spiritual or astral plane. So I wanted to get into that. And if you guys are asking questions, I apologize, because I haven't been having my glasses on at all to look at what you were saying here. So I guess Jake here. What the singing bowl, right? Yeah, I don't know what you guys are talking about. You guys are having your own conversation in the chat. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and now I got stuff on my glasses here. I don't know how that happened. I'm going to press play and let Ross start talking. You guys give me a sound check. Let me know if you can hear it okay. I know I have to turn it up a little bit, and then we'll go from here and we'll get started. Okay, so but I wanted to preface that with what's going on with the whole Terrence Howard thing, and how that's encompassing the world, including the academic world of physics. But that he mentioned slightly about spirituality, and no one has talked about that. Everybody's focused on the physical plane, and no one's in any way looking at what he said about spirituality and the dual aspect as well. They've just left that alone, which I'm all right with that, because as long as they're all focusing on the physical and still running around looking for the land of milk and honey, it's got to be here somewhere. I just know it because it was told about in a book. So therefore it has to be a real place, and we have to find it, when it's in fact inside their head. They're looking through the eyes that are coming out from the optic thalamus to actually try and find what they're looking past. Literally, they're using these eyes, looking past the third eye, to try and find something out here that they can go and touch and find the milk and honey, or find the fountain of youth. And it's actually right behind the eyes that they're using in this eye that they can only see it in. And that's the same thing with the spiritualities. Religion recruits you, spirituality waits for you to find it. Okay, let's press play, and you guys tell me, give me a sound check. Let me know if you guys can hear it okay.
May 13th, 1981. 51.0 Ra. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. We communicate now. 51.1 Questioner. As we begin Book 3 of the Law of One, there are a couple of questions, one of fairly non-transient importance and one which I consider to be a bit transient, that I feel obligated to ask because of communication with others. The first is just clearing up final points about harvest for our friend Name. And I was wondering if there is a supervision over the harvest, and if so, why this supervision is necessary and how it works, since an entity's harvestability is the violet ray. Is it necessary for entities to supervise the harvest, or is it automatic? Could you answer this?
So before Anne Bonny, yes, you did spell that right, Denise. Anne Bonny, the last thing Anne Bonny said before she ended up going into obscurity and hiding was, I was going to write a book. I was going to write books about female pirates. And I started, this is one of the reasons why I know this much. I did a lot of research between 2012 and 2015. 2016, I was going to start writing books about that, but ended up deciding that I was going to be doing this instead of writing that. But I was looking at Anne Bonny, was with Jack Rackham, and Jack Rackham was drunk and an idiot. But it was hard for Anne Bonny, who didn't have anything. She was Irish, and she was sold into slavery, basically, and married off to a man that was living in Louisiana. And then she left him, and she went out pirating, and she got hooked up with Jack Rackham and another female who I won't get into. But the three of them ran the ship as co-captains. And Jack Rackham being drunk when they were all, and that was a lot of people say it was taboo to even have a woman on board ships. In most navies, that's the way it was. Pirates didn't care about that because they didn't believe in that silly superstition that if you had a woman on board, you would all die. And they didn't care, whether she was the captain or not either. And that's why you should watch that Black Flag. I think it's called Black Sails, the TV series, mini-series that was like, 3 or 4 seasons long. You should watch that because that was actually based on real characters, real events that happened at Nassau, the island over on the East Coast outside of Florida, out into the Keys, past that actually into the Bahamas, south of the Bahamas in that area. You can look that up. Just look up Warsaw and find that. So literally somebody, I don't know if it was the English or the Americans, somebody caught up with Jack Rackham, and it was at night, and Jack Rackham was drunk out of his gourd, could barely stand up, and he was arrogant, egotistical, and he went up on deck and he was screaming across to the people who were shooting at him and telling them, "I am Jack Rackham. You cannot just get me or catch me." And because of that, he identified himself, and a sniper shot his ass. Okay. And then eventually they were overtaken and they had to surrender. So he didn't die, but they were all going to be tried. And of course they were like, well, they're the captains, and they were going to hang them. And Anne Bonny and the other woman both claimed to be pregnant. I don't know if they actually were. You could look that up, but literally she had sent a letter to her husband because they were brought him to America because they were just off the coast. So I'm thinking it was the Americans that captured them. They brought him to America, and she sent a letter to her husband saying that she wanted to come home. Please, could you pay my bail? And I told them that I was pregnant. I don't know if she really was or not. I was going to look into that, finish looking into that because she went into obscurity. So it was hard, but I believe she was. But I also believe that she ended up, because she ended up with him. He came and got her. And as they were walking out of the prison, they walked past the gallows, where literally Jack Rackham was about to be hung by the neck until dead. And he was still talking shit. "I am Jack Rackham, blah, blah, blah." And Anne Bonny says to him, and then we'll get back to the Law 1, the last thing she said in history that anyone knows about, till she went into obscurity with all of her money, by the way. She looked at Jack Rackham and she said, "If you were half the man you think you are, you wouldn't be about to be hung by the neck until death." And then she cussed at him, said something like, "Fuck off, bugger off." And she left with her husband. And Jack Rackham died a few seconds later, a couple minutes later, because they hung him, stretched his neck. Okay. And he died, and she left, and so did the other woman. They left and went into obscurity. And from what I understand, she got all the money. All the booty she kept, so she was rich and lived here in America and had kids. So I was going to start the book with these kids telling stories about pirates, and the old woman, the grandma or great grandma, telling them a story, and you don't know that it's Anne Bonny right away until the book gets going, and then you realize that it's her telling her own story. And then she was going to tell her own story to the kids about, because the boys were giving the girls a hard time and going, "You're just a girl and that's man's work. And what do you know?" And grandma was like, "Let me tell you a little story." Right. So I thought that was kind of cool, but a true story though, that really happened that way. You can look that up in history. Okay. So let's get back to the Law of One and just continue here with that. But you'll see where I'm going with the masculine and feminine really quickly by question 2. You're going to see that.
Please. Ra, I am Ra. In time of harvest there are always harvesters. The fruit is formed as it will be, but there is some supervision necessary to ensure that this bounty is placed as it should be without the bruise or the blemish. There are those of 3 levels watching over harvest. The first level is planetary, and that which may be called angelic. This type of guardian includes the mind/body/spirit complex totality or higher self of an entity and those inner plane entities which have been attracted to this entity through its inner seeking. The second class of those who ward this process are those of the Confederation who have the honor/duty of standing in the small places at the edge of the steps of light/love so that those entities being harvested will not, no matter how confused or unable to make contact with their higher self, stumble and fall away for any reason other than the strength of the light.
Okay, so she did stay in there in prison. Just Denise put up on the screen, although she got the date wrong. She said 1970. I think you were saying 1790, right? Until she gave birth, but no records of what happened to Anne Bonny or her child after 1720. So yeah, because I told you she went into obscurity after that. So then that's why I said I thought that she did have a child, but I wasn't sure if she stayed in prison until she gave birth. Because they didn't lock up women who were pregnant back then. So I would have to look into that. I don't know where you looked that up, but I'd have to look into that. That's why they got out of prison, was because she was pregnant. They wouldn't separate the child, but they may have said, well, we have to see that you are actually pregnant and, know that you have a child. You can't just tell us that you are. So it was obvious that she did. But yeah, she got out of prison and then there is no record of her after that. It wasn't like she disappeared. She literally went to her husband and had a life here in the United States and went into obscurity. Why? Well, because she was done. She sowed her oats. She was done. And she had all the money that she got away with. Mistress Chang did the same thing. When she was done, she was the wealthiest pirate in the history of pirating ever. No one ever. And that was in the 1100s when Mistress Chang was a pirate. Okay. So, and then Anna, my mom's doing good today. She's a little off. She's doing better than she was a couple of weeks ago where she was having issues. During the full moon, she has issues, and we're almost into the new moon now. Next week will be the new moon. So she's doing a little bit better this week. But, she's got dementia. She's going to be continuing to decline until some point I'm going to be forced to put her into a home because I won't be able to take care of her unless I have enough money to where I can hire people to come in and take care of her. That's just the reality of it. Okay. So Rick said, I'll be back in a minute. No idea who you're talking about. Oh, Anne Bonny. Well, he's gone probably now. When Rick comes back. Oops, and I just dropped my glasses on the floor. He said, I have no idea who you're talking about. I'm talking about Anne Bonny the pirate, but Rick isn't here to hear that. Okay. Anne Bonny was a famous pirate, Rick. When he comes back, I'll tell him that if he asks again. Okay. So she might have, Denise said, was she involved in the Underground Railroad? I didn't do enough research. I just looked up successful female pirates and then found out she was the most successful one. She was sailing on a junk, just like you see in the movie. In fact, they were on Sao Fang's junk, but most of the Sao Fang character was based on Mistress Chang. It's just that it would be hard to sell here in this modern world to have Mistress Chang be the Sao Fang character. Now, I'm not saying there wasn't a Sao Fang, but most of what Sao Fang does in that movie is more of what Mistress Chang did. She was very prominent, but it was also a different time because if you look at that, that's supposed to be in I think the 1200s or 1400s, and Mistress Chang was a pirate in the 1112 to 1150 or something. Most pirates only pirate. Most people don't know this. The average person who's a pirate is only out on the seven seas for about 3 years. Rarely do they go past that. But everyone thinks that they were out there for 10, 20, 30 years, and they weren't. They usually either get sunk, get captured, and get hung, or they make a lot of money very fast. Because if you think about this, the Spanish, everybody, in fact, from Europe, but the Spanish, the French, and the English were coming over to the Americas and robbing everything from over here: spices, money, animal pelts, gold, silver, everything. They were stealing it from the people, killing the people, trading for it, trading beads and trinkets that meant nothing to them, that was worthless for riches to the people over here that had a barter system. And then they were taking it back across the ocean. All the riches went over into Europe. So one ship would have, I don't know, 2 or 3 tons and sometimes 30 tons of gold and silver on it. So if you were able to capture one ship that had that much booty, you're wealthy like a government. More money, than the King of England from one hall, unless he got the hall. That's why if you watch the Money Pit, the television show, they're talking about the possibility that some of the people who were coming to the Americas back in the 1100s, 1200s, 1300s were also doing the same thing, and they were supposed to be taking money back over to Europe, and that they were hiding it. I believe, because of everything I've read and learned about Oak Island, that was a depository, a repository. It was a bank. And I thoroughly believe that, and I believe that it was being run that way, where people would bring stuff to stash. Okay, because I think the Temple Knights were running it after a while, because that's what they did. Temple Knights, literally, if you were in England and you were going to go on the Crusades over into the Middle East, you couldn't take all a bunch of gold and silver with you. First of all, it's heavy and you have to have pack animals. Secondly, robbers are going to steal it from you and kill you along the trail. So you would give all of your riches to the Templar Knights, and they would give you a chit or some message that was written that was basically a code that nobody could decipher. And you would be told, when you get to Damascus, for instance, go and find this guy, and this is where he'll be. Give him this, and then you will have access to all of this money. And they would literally give that to the person, and the person would open a little scroll and read it, and it would be code that would tell them this person is owed 100 pounds worth of gold and 250 pounds of silver. And then they would just give you whatever you needed if you wanted it. That was where the banking system that we currently have, where you would put money in a bank and go overseas, and then you could go to a bank overseas and get cash, an ATM. The plastic card that we use, they used a little piece of paper that they wrote stuff on. Okay, so I believe that Oak Island was one of those from the black market. And it looks like people were bringing stuff there from around the world. And it looks now, and they're starting to believe this on the show, that the Vikings showed up in 1307, just before October, Friday, October 13th on 1307. That's why the 13th and Friday the 13th is bad luck. They showed up over there because the knights knew that they were going to be raided by the English and the French king. I'm sorry, the Pope and the French king. Were going to take them over and try to take all of their land and their titles and all of their money and arrest them all. So literally on Friday the 13th, 1307, this was going to happen. And when it did happen, they only captured about 8,000 knights. All the rest of them disappeared. All their ships, all their money, all their deeds, all their troops, everything that they had disappeared, except for some knights who stayed behind, who they tortured and murdered them all and burned them at the stake and all this, tried them for heresy against the church, called them Satanists and whatever else they could get them on. And they didn't get anything from them. A Viking king showed up with a bunch of longships, his entire fleet and all of his men, and met with the Templar Knights, and then sailed all the way up north, and then came across over to Nova Scotia in Canada. This has all been found out in the last 2 years by these guys investigating at the Oak Island and from around the world. And they believe that all of their money and whatever artifacts that the Templar Knights had, including the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, whatever it is that they had, was brought over to Oak Island. It's no longer there, because they also showed up over there. So I believe they came and got it and moved it somewhere else. But I believe that they had that as a bank vault underground where they stored people's stuff, because they now say there was a guy that was over here in the Americas who was taking all this money and it was supposed to go back to England. And the second trip that he came back, he went up to Nova Scotia, and they only came back with 1/3 or 1/10 of what they did the first time. And he claimed that was all that was over here. But yet he went over into that bay and went over to Oak Island. And they scuttled a ship there. So it looks like they came up there with all kinds of money that they were stealing from and I don't know if they were working for the English king or the Spanish king, and went over there. Okay, that's a little bit of history, and I'm done with that. So Rick, we were talking about, now that Rick's back, we were talking about Anne Bonny, who was a famous pirate. And that's what we were talking about before when you said, I don't even know who you guys are talking about. Anne Bonny, you can look her up. She was a pirate that was a pirate captain who got away with all kinds of money. One of the women pirates that you don't hear about in history. And then we were talking about Mistress Chang, who was a Chinese pirate, who was a captain of a ship. And most people don't know who she is. Those two women were more successful than any other pirate in the history of pirating on this planet. But you don't hear about them because they're not men. Okay, so let's get back into the law of one here, because then you'll see where I'm going with all of this masculine, feminine energy. So right now, what they're talking about is going to move into that. You'll see.
These Confederation entities catch those who stumble and set them aright so that they may continue into the light. The third group watching over this process is that group you call the Guardians. This group is from the octave above our own and serves in this manner as light bringers. These guardians provide the precise emissions of light/love in exquisitely fastidious disseminations of discrimination so that the precise light/love vibration of each entity may be ascertained. Thus the harvest is automatic in that those harvested will respond according to that which is unchangeable during harvest. That is the violet ray emanation. However, these helpers are around to ensure a proper harvesting so that each entity may have the fullest opportunity to express its violet ray selfhood. 51.2 Questioner. Thank you. This next question I feel to be a transient type of question. However, it has been asked me by one whom I have communicated with who has been intensely involved in the UFO portion of the phenomenon. If you deem it too transient or unimportant, we'll skip it, but I have been asked how is it possible for the craft of, shall we say, the fourth density to get here, in that it seems that as you approach the velocity of light, mass approaches infinite. We have talked about the increase of spiritual mass, and it was just a question as to how this transition from very distant planets is made in craft, and my question would be why craft would be necessary at all. This is not an important question. Ra, I am Ra. You have asked several questions. We shall respond in turn. Firstly, we agree that this material is transient. Secondly, those for the most part coming from distant points, as you term them, do not need craft as you know them. The query itself requires understanding which you do not possess. We shall attempt to state what may be stated. Firstly, there are a few third density entities who have learned how to use craft to travel.
See, there's an example of what Ra just said. We will try to state what can be stated. There's Ra saying there is some information that I know that I can't tell you. Okay, remember I said that before, where most people they skip by that. They don't realize that Ra was even saying there is just some information that I can't give you currently. And that happens a lot, but people don't realize why, because Ra never says this information, rarely, but it does come up. This information is information that you have to learn on your own, or the societal structure that you're living in currently cannot accept and will not accept this information, because the average grouping of knowledge isn't uplifted enough to actually warrant me being able to say this to you. And that's what that statement means. Let's continue with what Ross is going to say.
Between star systems while experiencing the limitations you now understand. However, such entities have learned to use hydrogen in a way different from your understanding now. These entities still take quite long durations of time, as you measure it, to move about. However, these entities are able to use hypothermia to slow the physical and mental complex processes in order to withstand the duration of flight. Those such as are from Sirius are of this type. There are two other types. One is the type which, coming from 4th, 5th, or 6th density in your own galaxy, has access to a type of energy system which uses the speed of light as a slingshot and thus arrives where it wishes without any perceptible time elapsed in your view.
Traveling without moving, by moving faster than the speed of light. Does that sound familiar? If you've read the Dune books or watched the first two movies, I think that they were getting into, well, they did mention it in the movies, but the book gives you a little bit more details about them traveling without moving instantaneously by slingshotting through those wormholes that are the fabric of the universe. See, now this is where we're starting to get into the energies and the dual aspect of energies, because being able to travel that fast without using propulsion systems is the feminine energy of the universe. The masculine energy is the colliding and exploding of molecules to create a chain reaction or a fusion reaction or a fission reaction, and creating a nuclear explosion, which is the biggest, that we have potentiation for energy at this development and on the Earth. But using hydrogen, now we know that we can also use that. The hydrogen bomb before the nuclear bomb, the hydrogen weapons, they did the same thing. But they're talking about being able to move now instantaneously through a wormhole faster than the speed of light, so that no perceived time. Literally, they just go and their space changes around them and they're there. That's folding space. This is what Frank Herbert talked about in Dune. So how is it that Frank Herbert knew about this? He's a science fiction novelist, yet the technology that he came up with for moving great distances across the galaxy without moving and literally folding space so that that's a wormhole, okay? That's another concept of the wormhole, folding space over. That's why you see that now. If you look it up, you see space not flat, but you see it curved up like this. And then you see the wormhole that moves someone from this plane to that plane. And that's actually all the way over there. Okay, so that's using wormholes and traveling like that is not a masculine trait, and you're not going through it. In Star Trek, they showed them with their engines blazing, and they were in one of those wormholes and flying through it. So that took them time. They would sit there for, being in warp, and that was them going into a wormhole and going through the wormhole in warp for like 3 hours, and then they'd come out of the wormhole. They were still using propulsion to push the ship. But literally, Ra's talking about being able to go using hydrogen to be able to move from one place to another without moving. No time in between, just you're there. And Frank Herbert talked about that in the Dune books. So what did Frank Herbert know, right? So these are some of the things that people get onto, and they put it into things. And now we have that, that book, I could have read that, and Carly could be just taking it from that book, right? But yet science knows that theory to be sound now, okay? And they started getting onto that with Einstein and the literally that scary intertwining of particles at a distance, right? Okay, let's continue.
The other type of experience is that of fourth, fifth, and sixth densities of other galaxies, and some within your own galaxy, which have learned the necessary disciplines of personality to view the universe as one being and, therefore, are able to proceed from locus to locus by thought alone, materializing the necessary craft, if you will, to enclose the light body of the entity. 51.3 Questioner: I assume that latter type is the type that we experience with most of our landings from the...
Okay, that's a good question. Let me put that up on the screen and I'll read that. Rick, that's actually a really good question. He says, I don't understand. Spoken communication is a human thing. Well, it is, but it's not just limited to only the human species in the universe. All three-dimensional beings have a form of this sound, right? So Rick says spoken communication is a human thing. I may be wrong, but I believe original communication is frequency and vibration. That is what is going on with my mouth, is frequency and vibration. I am taking sound through my breath and I'm pushing them through vocal cords, and the vocal cords are vibrating, sound vibrating, frequency, and then it's coming through, and then my mouth and my tongue and my teeth are moving to modulate this frequency and sound in a way that is making grunting sounds, and these different sounds that we have interpreted, because at some point somebody pointed at the hand and went, "Buck." And then everybody's got the idea that "buck" meant hand. And that became the word hand until somebody changed it, or somebody looked at it and went, "hand." Oh, okay. Hand, hand, hand. And that became hand. And then everybody started calling it that. That everybody agrees on each word. And then we start making up drawing sound, like in the 13th Warrior, when Ahmed, when Beowulf came to Ahmed and said, "You can draw sounds?" And he was like, "Yes, I can draw sounds and I can speak them back." So people were able to start communicating with grunts and things like that. And then a language develops because everybody agrees that something means that sound. That's all that is. So this language that I'm using is just the same thing, only you've been doing it your whole life, so it seems normal for you. And so you think this is a human construct. If you understood, say, dolphins, they speak in sound waves, which are squeaks and that kind of stuff. But it's not a bad concept for you not to understand. So let me continue with what you're saying. So frequency and vibration. So how these beings, Ra, collective, I thought that high up, they just be love, right? So now you're giving me like chat lingo, right? Light energy. So how can they understand our spoken communications? If you pay attention, what's happening is Dawn is asking with words, and that's going into Carla's ears, and she is channeling that information to Ra. Then Ra will say that they're actually looking into the thought patterns of Dawn to make sure they understand what Dawn is asking with these words. So there's more going on that is astral than there is just listening to the physical words. When they try, they have problems with that. When Dawn's asking them about dates and times and places, and you see throughout all 106 sessions where Ra has to go back and say, we miscalculated time because they're outside of time. And so from our perspective, they were trying to narrow things down. When they first said, when were you here on Earth? They said 33,000 years ago. Then, like in the next session, they said we did the math wrong. It was actually 12,000 years ago. It's hard for us at this level to relate in terms that you understand down there in your dimension. So there is some of that problem that you say, how is it that there is some lost in translation that was going on, and that does. And if you listen to psychics, mediums, when they're talking to the other side, everything comes in as visuals, sounds, smells, tastes, and then we interpret those here to mean something. Like, for instance, the Long Island medium says every time she sees a person, whether it's a man or a woman, wearing a gown or wearing an apron with a rolling pin, that means baking to her. So they give her that metaphor in her mind's eye of a person wearing an apron and holding a rolling pin that means cooking, baking. And then she interprets that saying, I see them dressed in that garb, so therefore they're telling me that they used to cook. Do you see? So we, as the interpreter here, have to then start to learn the language that they're trying to use. That's why when you have dreams, you don't understand them, and most people don't. And they have to actually, Amber, welcome. You're actually on Twitter. You're the first person who's actually talked while I was live on Twitter, for me to actually see the X showing that you're actually on Twitter. Welcome. I'm on live on Twitter every week, but nobody said anything in the chat to see if the chat comes into here, and I've never gone on there to find out. So welcome, Amber, to Orion Rising. We're talking about the law of one, and Rick just asked a really fascinating question. So you were absolutely right in wondering that, Rick, because how is it possible, right? Ra is channeling through Carla, and how is it that they understand our words? They actually had to go into Carla's mind and Dawn's mind to get the concept of our language and the binary code of our language to be able to translate into their own thought processes. And it's one of the reasons why, if you actually played which you can't do anymore, I was just on their site, I'm gonna have to look into it. They used to have the audio on there. You could press on there and listen. Carla spoke very slowly, and that's why it would take, to get through one session of answering the questions, it would take 30 to 45 minutes because she spoke very slowly. It was a lot of work to get that information in, and one word would come through every 4 or 5 seconds, almost literally. Okay. So yeah, Amber, welcome. I'm glad to see that somebody can, that the chat, if you're saying something on Twitter, will actually come into the studio for me to see you. So hi, look, there she is. Amber, I just put you on the air for everybody to see. You're the first person so far that's ever said anything live on Twitter while I was live on Twitter. So welcome. Okay, so yeah, that was a really good question, Rick, because that's something that I was wondering too. But I've seen people actually channel, and when that happens, a lot of times the host moves over, and the person that they're channeling starts actually talking through them like an avatar. They plug into this body, and then they just take over and start talking. And I'm telling you that either these people should be in acting and make movies because they would win Academy Awards, because you can see, if you have the ability to pay attention to who the person is before they go into the trance and have somebody channel through them. And then when they do, you can see a difference in their eyes. You can see their mannerisms are different. So either people are the greatest actors and they've lost their profession, because if they're that good and they can act, actress or actor, they should be doing that for a living if that's what they're doing, and they're trying to fake everybody, because they would make millions more money as an actor on stage or in a movie than they ever will pretending they're channeling somebody if they're fake, right? They'll make maybe $1,000 a month channeling and pretending, and that's what they'll have for the rest of their lives. And if they get really big, they might make a little bit more than that. But if they're that good to fool people and they're only fooling people, they should go and join an acting guild and get the acting card, because they'll be the movie stars and make hundreds of millions of dollars. Right. So that's why you have to look at that sometimes and say, if somebody was motivated to just be a charlatan, they won't last long, because if they are fake and they're acting and they're that good to get people to believe that they're that fake, they would make more money just going and being an actor than they would ever make from pretending. It's the people who don't have any of that stuff available, and they are not good at that. And that's usually why people who are fake don't last long in this industry. That's why I try to keep taking my glasses off so you guys can actually see my eyes, because I don't trust anyone who is channeling and closes their eyes. They don't want you to see what's going on, because people like me have the vision. We have the ability of sight, and I'll look into those eyes and go, that person is not who they're claiming they are. There's just the guy who was in there already. And I know the difference. And oh no, this is Ashtar. I'm literally coming through right now. No, you're not. You're not Ashtar. I know what his eyes actually look like. Doesn't matter which retinas they are. I can see past that. I've met Ashtar in real life, not in this physical form, because he said he was coming down here, but I've yet to have him come up and shake my hand. But I have seen him there when I've been there. I know what they look like. And I literally, the first time I saw that happen was when somebody was channeling Holy Mary, Mother of God, Mother of Jesus. And she came in and I saw her, waved at her, right? Saw her, she came in, everybody was waving at her. Watched her move, talking to people. And then she went in the other room and came back out. And she went in and got into her trance and came back out. And when she came back out and she started talking, I could see there was someone different in the eyes looking at me than there was before. Her mannerisms, the way she spoke, the way she moved, everything was different. And if that way, I've never seen that woman since. So if she was that good of an actress, I would have saw her on television somewhere and went, yeah, she is a great actress if she was fake. And she never got like super popular to where she was making millions of dollars from channeling. Otherwise, I was in the industry, still am. I would have seen her and went, yeah, that's that woman, man. She never got, so she was very humble and did that until she decided not to or whatever. I don't know what changed in her life, but I never saw her again. But I tell you, I knew who she was. Okay. So Christy, welcome, by the way. Anna Sargent, welcome. Joanna, welcome. For those of you who are popping in and say hello, hi. Right? If you don't say hello, I don't know that you're here. Okay, so let's continue with Raw talking about what we were getting into here. Now, Raw was asking, or Dawn was asking about people coming from other dimensions, or instead of the fourth dimension, the fourth dimension, or the fifth dimension, and coming here from long distances. And Raw was talking about using hydrogen. Some groups of people using hydrogen to be able to move a great distance from one place to another with no time lapse, going through basically wormholes, like Frank Herbert talked about in the books of the Dune saga, which they've now made a couple of movies from. All right, so let's continue.
Orion Group. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. The Orion Group is mixed between the penultimate and the latter groups. 51.4 Questioner. Why is a vehicle necessary for this transition? When you, as RA, went to Egypt earlier, you used bell-shaped craft, but you did this by thought. Can you tell me why you used a vehicle rather than just materializing the body? Ra, I am Ra. The vehicle or craft is the thought form upon which our concentration may function as motivator. We would not choose to use our mind/body/spirit complexes as the focus for such a working. 51.5 Questioner. Thank you. I would like to make a statement. I'm sure I'm somewhat off with this. It's a very difficult question to ask for me, because I don't really know what I'm talking about. But it seems to me, and you can tell me where I am going wrong with this statement, that we have 7 bodies each corresponding to one of the 7 colors of the spectrum, and that energy that creates these 7 bodies is a universal type of energy that streams into our planetary environment and comes in through 7 energy centers that we have called chakras to develop and perfect these bodies, and this is. Each of these bodies is in somehow related to the mental configuration that we have, in the perfection of each of these bodies and the total streaming, you might say, of this energy is a function of this mental configuration, and through this mental configuration we may block, to some extent, the streamings of energy that create each of these 7 bodies. Could you comment on where I am wrong and correct me in this that I have stated? Ra, I am Ra.
See, so I went back to that part, but now we're getting into the part where I was talking about, you'll see the masculine and feminine, because now he's going through, we were on probably question 5, I think. So we're going to get quickly back to that. That's where we left last week, but I wanted to pull back into that, getting to that, and you'll see why. And then everything that I've said earlier about the masculine and feminine energies, you're going to see come into play, because now we're talking about the archetypes again, and he's going to start going through the progression of the archetypes when it comes to relating to not only in the physical body, but in the astral planes, 1st dimension, 2nd dimension, 3rd dimension, 4th dimension, and so on. So let's continue.
Your statement is substantially correct. To use the term mental configuration is to oversimplify the manners of blockage of streaming which occur in your density. The mind complex has a relationship to the spirit and body complexes which is not fixed. Thus blockages may occur betwixt spirit and mind, or body and mind, upon many different levels. We reiterate that each energy center has 7 subcolors, let us say, for convenience. Thus spiritual/mental blockages combined with mental/bodily blockages may affect each of the energy centers in several differing ways. Thus you may see the subtle nature of the balancing and evolutionary process. 51.6 Questioner. I am unsure as to whether this will provide an avenue of questioning or not that will be fruitful. However, I will ask this question since it seemed to me that there is possibly a connection here. On the back of the book, Secrets of the Great Pyramid, there are several reproductions of Egyptian drawings or works, some showing birds flying over horizontal entities. Could you tell me what this is and if it has any relationship to Ra? Ra, I am Ra. These drawings of which you speak are some of many which distort the teaching of our perception of death as the gateway to further experience. The distortions concern those considerations of specific nature as to processes of the so-called dead mind/body/spirit complex. This may be termed, in your philosophy, the distortion of Gnosticism, that is, the belief that one may achieve knowledge in a proper position by means of carefully perceived and accentuated movements, concepts, and symbols. In fact, the process of the physical death is as we have described before, one in which there is aid available and the only need at death is the releasing of that entity from its body by those around it and the praising of the process by those who grieve. By these means may the mind/body/spirit which has experienced physical death be aided, not by the various perceptions of careful and repeated rituals. 51.7 Questioner. You spoke in earlier time of rotational speeds of energy centers. Am I correct in assuming that this is a function of the blockage of the energy center, and the less blocked it is, the higher speed of rotation, then indicating greater energy streaming? Ra, I am Ra. You are partially correct.
Okay, now I want to stop there really quickly, and then we'll let Ra continue with this. Now, know that what Dawn is referring here, and because of what Ra was inferring, and Ra is now going to elucidate, is that these energy points or chakras are energy wheels. I bring that up and say that specifically because the Greeks from 6,000 years ago, 6,500 years ago, referred to and called the chakras energy wheels. So here's a group of people 6,500 years ago that actually knew that these were called energy wheels. Wheels within wheels. And I'm sure you heard that in the Hebrew Bible, right? I saw wheels within wheels. Okay. So these are logos and sub-logos, energy chakras, and the chakras are spinning energy fields, vortices, as it were. Okay. And now Ra is going to explain that and said literally if they're unblocked, your chakras, they're going to be spinning at a higher rate of speed, faster. And when they do that, and they start to crystalline, literally. Okay, let's continue.
In the first 3 energy centers, a full unblocking of this energy will create speeds of rotation. As the entity develops the higher energy centers, however, these centers will then begin to express their nature by forming crystal structures. This is the higher or more balanced form of activation of energy centers, as the space/time nature of this energy is transmuted to the time/space nature of regularization and balancing. 51.8 Questioner: what do you mean by crystal structures? Ra: I am Ra. Each of the energy centers of the physical complex may be seen to have a distinctive crystalline structure in the more developed entity. Each will be somewhat different, just as in your world no 2 snowflakes are alike. However, each is regular. The red energy center often is in the shape of the spoked wheel. The orange energy center in the flower shape containing 3 petals. The yellow center again in a rounded shape, many-faceted, as a star. The green energy center, sometimes called the lotus shape, the number of points of crystalline structure dependent upon the strength of this center.
Okay, so before we go any further, now look at, go east. Okay, so we were talking about the Greeks, right? Now go east to India, China, Japan, Asia, and what do you get? The chakras, and they coincide with everything that they're describing. If you go and look up the chakras right now, and I've posted about them all over. In fact, I always do. Look at the shapes and the symbols that they use for each color, for each chakra. It's exactly what Ra's talking about. Now, some people will just say, well, Carla knew that because she learned philosophical thought from the Eastern philosophical way, and that she's just using that and saying that. But they knew about it, and other people knew about it from around the world who supposedly had no communication with anybody whatsoever. Yet independently, people all the way up in Norway, and people down in Australia, and people over in Japan, and people over in South America came up with the same idea and expressed it in drawings, slightly different, only slightly different. And the tree of life in and of itself, I've made a reel about that shows you the human physiology, and the pneumogastric nervous system is the tree of life. And that the tree of life by the Hebrews, the tree of life by the Asians, the tree of life by the Egyptians, and all of those, and the tree of life by the Greeks and Romans, are all a representation of the exact same tree of life. The Vikings' tree of life, Yggdrasil, is the same tree of life. The human body being the tree, the trunk and the branches, and the pneumogastric nervous system in our body, our nervous system, being the internal, literally branches and root system of the tree of life, which has been shown in all of its guise, and I show you that in the video as well. So I'm making that correlation. If you go back and watch in the last 2 years the reels and shorts that I've made, you're going to see in my book that I'm having coming out later this year, and in the next book that's going to be coming out in a couple of years, you're getting a look into my mind of what I'm putting in my books, because this is the information that people are going to look back on and go, he's been telling us this for years. It's in his book and I'm reading it. And the truth is, if you were a follower of his, you've already heard him say all of this, because he's been shouting it to the universe, to this world, for like 30 years. But no one was ready to hear it when I was younger. And now people are getting onto that. And that's why I brought up the flower of life that Terrence Howard talked about. And now all these videos that keep popping up where people are now talking about this information. Why? Because there's more people that are getting back onto it, because this time that we're moving into is expanding the consciousness. You would have never heard this when Ra was talking in 1981 to Dawn. Let's continue. You couldn't, because Ra couldn't tell you. Ra literally said, let me give you this in a way that I can, right? Because there's certain information that Ra couldn't say. It's one of the reasons why I'm interpreting it now, and did it again earlier in between 2017 and 2021. because for the same reason. I'm doing it a second time because there's more information that I can actually tell you now when I'm interpreting this, because we have exponentially grown as a species on this earth, and we're going to continue to do so. Big changes between now and 2032. Let's continue.
The blue energy center capable of having perhaps 100 facets and capable of great flashing brilliance. The indigo center, a more quiet center which has the basic triangular or three-petaled shape in many, although some adepts who have balanced the lower energies may create more faceted forms. The violet energy center is the least variable and is sometimes described in your philosophy as thousand-petaled, as it is the sum of the mind/body/spirit complex distortion totality. 51.9 Questioner. Right now I feel a feeling at the indigo center. If this center were totally activated and not blocked at all, would I then feel nothing there? Ra. I am Ra. This query, if answered, would infringe upon the law of confusion. 51.10 Questioner.
See, so there's something that Ra can't tell Dawn because Dawn's not ready for it. And moreover, our Earth wasn't ready to know the answer to that question back in 1981. Infringe on the law of free will. All right, let's continue.
Immediately after the death of the physical body, you have stated that I believe,
or I should say, infringe on the law of confusion, which is the veiling. All right, let's continue.
I'm correct in saying that primary activated body is the indigo, and you stated that it is the form maker. Why is this so? Can you answer that? Ra. I am Ra. This will be the last full query of this session of working. The indigo body may be seen to be an analog for intelligent energy. It is, in microcosm, the logos. The intelligent energy of the mind/body/spirit complex totality draws its existence from intelligent infinity or the creator. This creator is to be understood, both in macrocosm and microcosm, to have, as we have said, two natures, the unpotentiated infinity which is intelligent. This is all that there is. Free will has potentiated both the creator of us all and ourselves as co-creators with intelligent infinity which has will. This will may be drawn upon by the indigo, or form-making, body, and its wisdom used to then choose the appropriate locus and type of experience which this co-creator or sub-logos you call so carelessly a person will take.
Right, so I like what Rick, he said, I'm going to put this up on the screen and read it for those people on the MP3 broadcast, right? But one of the original stories I heard about the Milky Way, etc. last night on the tour was a possum, a ringtail possum. I can definitely see that one. Well, it's one of the reasons why, say the possum in the idea of the possum hanging and sleeping, and then playing possum, where you can't tell if the possum is alive or dead. And that saying, at least here in America, we'd say, oh, they're playing possum, which means they're pretending to be dead, so you can't tell until, because the possum will do that, and then it'll start to move, and you go, "Oh my God, it's still alive! I thought it was dead." Is the dead but or not dead but sleeping? And you hear this, right? It's one of the reasons why I call my show Orion Rising, and the book Orion Rising, but the book is more about the physical and aliens, but the concept is still the same, and about the fall and people being asleep. The veiling, and that, like, for instance, the Andromedans, when they were talking to Alex Coulier, said that they had a hard time understanding why it is that we're pretending to be asleep here in this place, that we're pretending to be asleep, saying you guys are supposed to know by now that you are who and what your place is in the universe, but you haven't woken up to that, and you're pretending that you're asleep and don't know, because that's the veiling. Do you see? So that's a great analogy that is being told anciently from the Aborigines, the original people, about a possum. And when you look at the different religions, ancient religions, like when they talked about Tiamat in the Mesopotamian religion, that when Marduk killed Tiamat, she was not dead but sleeping. And then when you go to Egypt, you have that same analogy about the gods, that they're not dead but sleeping. And then when you go to the north, the Vikings and all these people, and they're supposedly never met one another, and yet they're talking about the same thing when one of the the sleeping giant, the giant's not dead but sleeping, or they would say was the giant was killed, but the giant is not in fact dead, it's asleep. So there's this reference around the world to the possum in different aspects of these deity figures, showing this veiling of not knowing, so being in a sense dead. And then when you look at the Christos, that's literally the same concept of the Christ dying but not being dead. Christ is sacrificed, Christ is crucified, died, but then ascended. So that means that he was not dead at all, but a physical appearance of death. That's the same as a possum, in reference to a possum playing dead. Do you see? So that's a great reference, and the Aborigines use that. Usually, people use a reference of something that is when they're talking metaphorically, that is something that people will relate to in their culture, right? So for instance, the Native Americans talking about tortoises here in the Americas, turtles. And when you turtle, the turtle moves in and lays down and moves into the shell, and you can't tell if the turtle is alive or dead, and it sits there still. Same thing, possum, same concept, right? And then Rick says, I'm seeing the posts of mine from back in 2009 promoting spiritual beliefs, my quotes, working, etc. And I wasn't aware that I was awake. I somehow knew shit, but didn't know it. You know what? I did the same thing when I was writing, not this last book, but when I was writing different books that I have printed and other stories that I haven't, to where I was doing something and then I made a change in the plot, or at least I thought I was making a change in the plot. And I went, I have to go back now to this certain scene in chapter 4 because I have to change that so that this fits later on. Otherwise, people are going to get here from what I said back there. And then I would go back and go, wait a minute, I had already set that up. How did I know that? Subconsciously, did I know I was going to make the change to the story at this particular place? Or you go back and you look at stuff that you posted and you didn't think that you knew what you were saying, which is exactly what you're saying here. And now that you're more awake, you go back and you go, wow, I was leaving clues for myself. So this is the concept of that. I love that you said that, Rick, because you're seeing that about yourself. But I believe, and this was what I talked about, and I don't know if I put that in my book. I think I discussed it in this book, and if not, I'll do it in the next, where I talk about like the Bible code. And I've said this on the show many times. The Bible code from the early 2000s, and they used the skip trace program to calculate from the Hebrew Bible, and they would plunk in, say, my name, and the computer would go through, every other letter and put it all, organize it all for every page, and then identify if there's any words like a crossword puzzle going up and down and left and right and diagonals that match, that make any kind of sense in the Hebrew language, and that they could translate obviously into English. And then they would circle those letters in all those directions. And you would find that like my name would come up, and then like going in all directions off of all the letters from my name, or all these other things. And they all have to do with all the things I've done in my life. And that is how they started realizing the Bible code was there. But they can never predict ahead of time, because you have to think outside the box and think of the future. Like they couldn't say, is there going to be a space shuttle crash sometime? And so if somebody thought that one of these space shuttles are going to crash, and then they went to the Bible code and went space shuttle accident, and then it would come up prior to. So they haven't really gotten on board with that. Everything that they do is after the fact, 9/11, Twin Towers, and then they had all this stuff that came up in the Bible code. And they're like, if we would have known what words to program in to begin with, we could tell the future. But you have to think outside the box and think about the future and come up with the possibilities. As soon as Donald Trump was running for president, they could punch in his name. You see my point? So, but it's not until Donald Trump was already on that path. So you have to have an algorithm that can run through all of that. And that's what's happening a little bit more today with the AI. But the problem is they're still spitting things out, and it's not making as much sense because there's part of the code that they haven't unlocked yet. However, my theory was, because of the same thing that you have observed, Rick, and I did about myself and many other things being a code breaker, the things that I observed were in retrospect, you find that all of this stuff is already there, even when you were unaware of it. And I said, I believe, because a guy who was saying that he was literally trying to discount the idea of the Bible code by taking the book Moby Dick, which is almost identical in the amount of words from the that are in the Bible for the Hebrew Bible, and said, I took your same algorithm, your same Bible code, and I plunked it in here, and I was finding the same information. Well, I said, I think that code is in everything. It's the cyclical nature of nature. It's the Fibonacci sequence, or the phi, the golden mean ratio, that it is literally already in the fabric of our DNA, which is a double helix, which is exactly the same Fibonacci sequence. Literally in everything that we do, in the computers, in sound, vibration, like you were saying before, frequency, vibration, and energy, frequency, and vibration. Like Nikola Tesla said, you want to know the secrets to the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. That is literally what that is. The Kundalini energy and the Kunda buffer energy, the masculine and feminine. So I believe it's literally in everything, and we don't know about it until we're looking at it in retrospect. And when you become unveiled, when you're Neo, who is able to see the matrix with the ones and zeros and zeros and ones, then you see spirals in the reality. You see the cyclical nature of the Torus. And when you start to perceive things that way, which is what I think Terrence Howard is done most of his life, but he doesn't know how to. He's doing it in the physical, scientific physics aspect, which is, don't get me wrong, it's going to revolutionize the world. I'm doing the same thing in the spiritual side with the book that will be coming out in a couple of months. But I kind of mentioned a little bit about the physics, because you can't differentiate physics from spirituality at all. That's the problem that they've been trying to do, is draw a line between church and state and say that there is no to the physicality of the universe. There is no God. There is nothing manifest. There is nothing that is spiritual in any way, astral in any way. And because they separate those, you're separating the masculine and the feminine, the physical plane being the masculine and the spiritual plane being the feminine. So what you're doing is we're looking at one half of the universe and trying to figure out the entire totality of the universe, and you cannot do that. And science has been for 6,500 years, been referring to the earth as flat and a two-dimensional ideology and mathematics divisible by 10, not 12. Looking at everything from a masculine standpoint with only the masculine energy and only fire and destruction to fuel everything, only one aspect of the universe and not the other aspect of the universe, which is the feminine, which is the cold, which is the softness, the curvature of the universe, the cyclical nature where everything is free. And you don't have to blow things up and destroy things with the destruction of the masculine energy. Ra's alluding to this right here. Danny, welcome. Hi, or what other platforms is this streaming? It's on Facebook, it's on YouTube, and it's on Twitter currently. And then it's also after the show, I will take the recording from the show, Danny. I hope you're still here to hear this. And I will turn it into the MP3 file, and then I upload that to the entire planet. So anywhere you listen to a podcast, if you don't want to watch the MP4 version and you just want to listen to me, you can either just tune in on Twitter under my name, Leonard O'Neill, YouTube under my name, Leonard O'Neill, or on here on Orion Rising, or on my name on Facebook, or anywhere on your cell phone that you get a podcast. Look up Orion Rising or my name and Orion Rising, and the podcast is there. And I have almost 500 episodes currently on there. There used to be more on YouTube until they deplatformed me, and now I have about 300 or 400 back on the new account, but I had over 500 3 years ago, or 2.5 years ago, that they deleted, almost 700 episodes that were there. So the ones that are on the MP3 broadcast are only about 4 or 5 years old, and I've been doing this show for 7. Okay, so that's to answer your question. I'm everywhere in the world. They listen to me in more than 70 countries, but it's not live. but I'm thinking about transferring to that platform, back to that platform and going live there. But then I won't be on Facebook and I won't be on YouTube and I won't be on Twitter, but there'll be a link from there to somewhere else. But you can hear me anywhere on the world. So if you don't like Facebook, go to YouTube. I'm there. And if you don't like either one of those, go to Twitter. If you don't like all three of those, just pick up your phone and punch in a podcast, whatever app that you're using. I'm already there. And if I'm not, you can go to Podbean or go to orionrising.podbean.com or just go to podbean.com and then punch in Orion Rising or my name or both. And then you'll come up with my podcast that's there, and you can click on the RSS number that is there for you, and then go to your app and give it to the people who have created your app, and they'll accept it on that platform. And then my show will automatically go, when I post it, it'll automatically go to the platform that you listen to your podcast on, and it'll be there on your podcast. That's the only way that it gets there, is you have to have the RSS number, which I have available on podbean.com. Okay. All right. So thank you. Danny said, perfect. I'm looking right now. So you can literally go that way. You can listen to all my other shows, because we're on Just for the Law of One. This time we're on class 94. So 94 weeks of doing the Law of One, and we're on session 45, but I did it all already prior to that, but I'm doing it at a higher vibration now because things have changed exponentially in the past 5 years. So I'm literally doing, but there's also other shows that I have done. So you'll see that it'll be titled Orion Rising, and then you'll see what after that, or sometimes you'll see like Ancient Aliens, because I created Ancient Aliens Worldwide on Facebook, which is the largest Ancient Aliens group on Facebook on the planet. Literally, there isn't any that are bigger than us. And that's been around since 2012. And I because I still own it, I do produce for them as well. And we'll do interviews with the people from the television show on Ancient Aliens Worldwide for their books and the different things. I had Giorgio Tsoukalos a few years ago, just before the show aired. And some of the shows that are airing, I usually do a show with the person who's going to be on that episode. And just prior to it going live, East Coast America time. So you'll see there's a lot of videos or a lot of podcasts that will say like Ancient Aliens and other things where I've been involved in either producing or been a guest speaker. Okay. So let's continue. So literally you have to realize that in the physics world, and this is why Terrence Howard talking about what he's doing now is reintegrating the masculine and feminine energy. And that's why you see a lot more of that happening. And that's going to revolutionize the history of the world going forward, because free energy and everything else comes out of the feminine, not the masculine. The masculine is warlike, destruction, blowing up oil, blowing up atoms, nuclear fission, hydrogen explosions. Everything is colliding. Hadron Collider is all physical. And it's the only way that we can make anything work here was with friction, which means molecules damaging other molecules in some way. But the universe itself, and this is what Ra was talking about with moving without any time, is literally jumping into a wormhole and moving from one place and to the other in the universe. Balancing your chakras. Let me get right back to what Ra was talking about. Balancing your chakras then tends to put your chakras into a place where they're vibrating at a certain speed faster, and they start to crystalline. Because the crystalline structure is the perfect structure when it comes to what Rick was talking about earlier with the harmonics and the resonance, energy, frequency, vibration, which is what 3, 6, and 9, what Nikola Tesla talked about is the secret to the universe, is when you put all of those three together, it makes up the torus, which is now the kundalini energy of the masculine and the feminine energy, and one's going clockwise and the other's going counterclockwise, and they loop back on themselves and create this torus with a hole down to the center, which is basically a wormhole. And it goes to 0 point. And that 0 point is the Higgs boson, is the God particle, and it's the combination of the logos. It is the perfection that is the closed circuit that is the universe itself in every aspect. Each one of those closed universes that makes up a torus, and the energy is your physical body, this solar system, this planet, the solar system, the galaxy, the universe. Each one of those is a logos, which is the creation energy of itself, and then a sublogos and a sublogos and a sublogos, all the way down to your individual chakras. being a sub logos, and having those 7 major arcana, and then off from those where there's a knuckle bend in anything, your wrist, your knuckles, your hips, your elbows, your shoulders, those all have sub chakras that work from the main 7 chakras. Okay, let's continue. Hopefully that wasn't too much information and too confusing. And if so, just ask questions in the chat. If so, just ask questions in the chat. Let's let Ra continue.
This is the time for any brief queries. 51.11 questioner. Is there anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or improve the
Yeah, you're talking about no, it's not. Yeah, the one for tomorrow, to answer your question, Denise, the podcast tomorrow, we were going to do the workshop. And I have family coming in, and one of the girls that was going to be a presenter was in the hospital, got out of the hospital yesterday. So she's still kind of recovering. So Aaron Fowler, him and his wife were putting the workshop together and asked me if I would help them to co-host. We were going to do it tomorrow, but at the last second yesterday, because of her having the issues, Aaron said, hey, listen, if you want to have recovery time, and we can postpone the workshop for a couple of weeks, and then we can promote it better and get more people interested, and that'll give you time. She was like, oh no, I'll be okay. Well, I didn't realize that my family had said they're coming up tomorrow, and I said yes to them, and then checked to my sister, are you guys coming up tomorrow or on Saturday? And she said yes. And I was like, Aaron, I'm glad I checked because I got family coming up tomorrow. So I vote that we go ahead and postpone it. And then she came in and said that would actually work better for me. And Aaron said done. So it is I believe it's the 15th, because you're saying 16th, whatever the Saturday is. Penny, she says, or was it the 16th? It is in 2 weeks. So I don't know if that's the 15th or 16th, but the link is on my page as well. And I think I linked it in the Orion, right, or the Law of One chat. So you can look on there and see. But we do have a workshop that's going to be in 2 weeks now, 2 weeks from tomorrow, that we're doing, that getting in touch, embracing your higher self, or your best higher self. I don't remember exactly the word that were used for it. But it is a workshop that you have to pay for to attend. And there's at least 4 speakers. And then there's Aaron, Norma, and myself who will be filling in between. So you guys will be getting us for free. But there will be people that will be working with you, at least 4 or 5 people. I don't remember exactly how many are scheduled. And then there'll be at the end, there'll be a discussion panel where everybody's going to tune in, that will all get on there and talk, whoever, and go through. So that's going to be really cool. And I think it's only $10 plus tax or something for the day, and it's going to be about 5 or 6 hours. Don't quote me on the exact time. I didn't make the schedule. I'm not producing it. I'm just a co-host. Otherwise, I'd have more details, but I don't have all the details. However, another commercial. So you guys can go to my page for that, or go to the Law of One chat, or to Aaron Fowler if you know who he is, or Norma Rasmussen, which is his wife, if you know who she is. They have a YouTube channel and a Instagram and a Facebook and the whole nines, and a website that you can go to. And if you don't know that, contact one of the people in the chat here, and they'll give you the information, because most everybody in the chat, Denise and Penny at least, know everybody. Deborah Anderson, welcome, by the way. Literally now Monday, today's Friday here in America, it's Saturday if you're in Australia. Right. And it's almost Saturday if you're in the UK, because it's almost midnight over there, because you're 8 hours ahead of us. Monday, my time, 1 p.m. West Coast America time, 1 p.m. West Coast America time. Monday, I will be the guest speaker on Project Team Alpha, the podcast. Augie Nost is, and Nora, what's her last name? I don't remember Nora's last name. The two of them are the co-hosts of Project Team Alpha. I'm going to be the guest speaker on Monday at 1 p.m. West Coast America time. That's GMT -7. UK -8. So you guys can figure out wherever you are in the world if you want to tune into that. And I'll put that up on my page, a link to their channel, so you guys can watch that. I think they go live on Facebook and YouTube and somewhere else as well. So I'll have a link up for you guys if you want to tune in and hear. I'm going to be talking about the Law of One. So I'll be on there for an hour on their show on Monday, and then in 2 weeks from tomorrow, I'll be a host, one of the co-hosts for the workshop that Aaron Fowler and his wife are putting on, and then we'll get you more commercials as we get closer to that. So I just want to throw those commercials at you guys in case you wanted to tune in. I don't have a link from those guys yet about the for the show. As soon as I get that link for Monday's show, I'll put that up on all the platforms for you guys to be able to know where to click on to if you guys want to tune in for that hour that I'll be on there to talk about the Law of One. And I've already talked to Augie about when we get closer, and I have a definite timeline on my book that's going to be coming out in a couple of months, that he's going to have me back, and we'll be doing a show an hour talking about my up and coming book to launch that as well. And I'll be doing that on here as well as other platforms, I'm sure, for the reality about reality, returning to the old ways, which I think my publisher was trying to contact me. And when I went live today, I'll find out after the show and find out if that was in fact my publisher, but they're probably gone home for the night at about 4 p.m. my time. They'll be going home. I think that's when they're because that'll be what 8 or 4, 5, 6, 7 the East Coast, and I'm not sure where my publisher is, what state, but they are in the United States. Okay, so let's continue here because we're almost done with this. Let's go ahead and get this session done today. Okay.
Contact. Ra, I am Ra. All is well. You are conscientious. I leave you now, my brothers, in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, then, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai.
Okay, so yeah, I wanted to finish that at the very least before we went. So literally, what we were talking about there is that energy in the chakras, and you heard Ra talking about the spinning wheel, and if you look in history, if you know anything about philosophy and the like in history, these ancient cultures knew about it. I mentioned that in my book, where there is a time thousands of years ago when every culture on this earth, and it's all still in the information, they all knew about the true spirituality of this earth and what all of us were supposed to be doing. In that time, people lived for thousands of years in every culture. And those are all stories that people were like, well, they just calculated time wrong. So they weren't literally living for 10,000 years. They were only living for like 35 years. That's untrue. They were living for thousands of years. Come forward in time, and then we have the fall of the Tower of Babel, which is when everybody fell. And that's what you hear about in the Bible, where it says the devil shall rule the earth for a time, which suggests beginning, middle, and end. A time. Not the devil is going to rule the earth forever, or the devil is the righteous ruler of the earth. A lot of people say that in religion, that they believe that this place is hell and the devil is the ruler here. Though that's propagated by evil people. That's a lie that's propagated by evil people to make you think that this place is hell, you're in it, and that you're a slave here. That's been what the rich elite people are trying to get you to believe in this world, that they own you and that they're part of the elite establishment that is the devil's minions, and that they're sub-devils and sub-demons, and they're in charge and they own you and you're just a slave and they can do whatever they want with you. That's what they want you to believe. If you believe that, you make it more so. Your focus determines your reality. Okay. Right. So Penny says, where have I heard, I gotta put my glasses on. Where have I heard, what are you saying? Anwenot before? I don't know what that word means. AWNEWNOT. Is that typos? Tell me if that's what you're trying to say, other than from Ra. So I'm not sure what you're typing there, whether that was a typo and you're trying to type more than one word, or if you're trying to say Anwenot. I don't understand what that is. Or you're saying Adonai. That's what you're saying. I had to interpret that. Yes, Adonai is, I believe that's what you're trying to say. And it just came out that way because you didn't know how to spell it. Adonai, at the very end, what Ra just says, last thing Ra says. Yeah, that is what you're referring to. Adonai is actually the ancient, you've heard it, because it's the ancient word that means God, creator of the universe. all cultures. And this is what I was part of what I was referring to. So it's really cool, Penny, that you caught that. And we're like, wait, I know that word. Why do I know that? Because that comes from Sanskrit. That's a Sanskrit word. Adonai means God, creator of the universe, God, king of the universe. Okay. So literally, that is the ancient Sanskrit word, which is literally the ancient Hebrew word is derived from, and all other words that we get the word God, creator. Okay. It comes from that. So again, that word goes back tens of thousands of years on this earth. That's why Ra says, I leave you in the love and the light of the infinite creator of the universe. Adonai, saying the name. Adonai. Okay. Saying the name of the creator of the universe. And but the name is not like my name is Leonard, and that's the name of God. Although people did refer to God as Adonai, but the word is a concept that means God, creator of the universe, king of kings. You hear them translate that from Sanskrit to Hebrew or to Yiddish, and then into English when you read the Christian Bible. And Jesus is his father is the King of Kings, or Jesus is the King of Kings. That's literally the English translation of the word Adonai. Okay, that is literally, if you look that Sanskrit word up, if you look up Adonai, go to lawof1.info, LAWOFONE.INF as in Frank O, lawof1.info. And then when the site map comes up, go over to sessions, click on that, click on any session, go down to the very bottom, look at the very last sentence, and get the spelling Adonai, and then Google that word, origin. And put in that word and then type in the word origin, historical or religious origin. And it'll come up that is an ancient word that was used by all cultures, and they translated it into the concepts that they understood, and then it is morphed into the word God. Or in Latin, which you've heard the Latin, when the priests are doing this and they're saying in nomine Patri, which means in the name of the Father, et Filii, and Son, a Spiritus Sancti. Spiritus Sancti is the translation Adonai, which they're translating into two words: Holy Spirit. Spiritu, spirit; Sancti, holiness. Holy Spirit, but they speak backwards to English. We speak backwards to most languages. So, in nomine Patri et Filii Spiritus Sancti means in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, the Trinity, meaning totality, oneness. Adonai means oneness. Okay. We get the word Amen that comes from the word Adonai. It translates down to Ahmed, Amen. Okay. Amun, Amun Ra, Amun Re, Amun, meaning son of. Okay. Meaning Trinity, Father, Son, Trinity. So in all cultures, these words came from these ancient words, Greek and beyond that, Egyptian, beyond that, Sanskrit, beyond that, to other languages that are mostly dead languages now. And this word Adonai means creator of the universe. You see that word more in the Dead Sea Scrolls than you do in the modern Hebrew or Christian Bible or Muslim Bible. But yet those books were taken out by Constantine at the First and Second Council of Nicaea. So yeah, it's Adonai, but I don't think there's an S at the end of it, and I don't know if that's. I would have to look as well, and so I would have to go online and pull it up. So I don't know if there's an S on the end of it, Rick, but you can Google. I think it just has an I at the end of it. Let me look it up. I'll go to over here. Let me go to lawof1.info and I'll tell you the actual spelling. Okay, I was just there earlier today. Yeah, I literally was just there looking at because I was making a couple of here. Let me scroll down. Here's one right here that I already have pulled up. And where is it? Okay, hold on. I have to go to a session. It could have yes. I just don't remember when I was looking at it. So let me find it here, Rick, and I'll tell you. And of course, in this one, he didn't say Adonai. All right, let me go to the second session. One of them, he says it. He said it in this one, so let me go to that session. No, it's spelled A-D, as in Debbie, as in David, O-N-A-I, Adonai. That's how it's spelled. A-D, I'll type it in the chat and then put it up on the screen. A-D-O-N-A-I. A-D-O-N-A-I, Adonai. So I'll put it in the chat and then I'll put it up on the screen if things will stop moving. Adonai with a capital A, okay? And that's the ancient word that meant creator of the universe. And then so that word is a Sanskrit word. I'll leave it up for you guys to take a look at. Hi, Bo. Welcome, brother. So I'll leave that up for you guys to take a look at. I just didn't capitalize it because I was trying to get it up for you as quick as possible. But so that's literally when Ross says, "I leave you in the hands of the Creator, infinite Creator of the universe, Adonai." Adonai it has been translated eventually into Amen, which comes from Amun. Right? Literally, you should look that up in the Egyptian pantheon, but that's a translation of a Sanskrit word. So that comes down to the concept word of the creator of the universe. So it also is more resonant, Penny, to get back to what you're saying. It's more resonant frequency-wise. That word still resonates in your DNA more than if I said God. More than if I said creator. The only word that we have in the English language that's similar, that resonates, is creation or source. Those two words bring up the same harmonics, close. It's still off by a slight octave. Resonance to Adonai. Adonai is almost perfect. That's why it's the Om. That's where that comes from too, by the way. So the Om is the sound resonance of Adonai. Om. It's a frequency shift, but it's the same resonance in a different key. Do you understand that? I don't know if you know anything about music. So literally, it's a slight variation. It's a different key. One is in G and one is in C. Okay, Om is perfect, so it's in G. Okay, and Adonai is also in G, but when we say with our mouth, when we hit Om, it vibrates in the head. So the sound that comes out of our mouth is in G, but in our head it resonates as G minor, and Adonai resonates as G major or G flat. G flat. So, but if I were to close my mouth, but you can't close your mouth when you say Adonai. But if you have the same sound, Adonai, then close your mouth. It is the Om sound. So when you close your mouth, it resonates in your head and it changes the octave to the minus G. But when it comes out of your mouth, when you're not resonating it through your skull and it's coming out in the frequency here, it's the same sound resonation, but it's in for your ears. So when they say Adonai, when you hear that fall off of it's the same as Om, because Om is with the mouth closed. Try it. Say Adonai and carry the I in the exact tone and then close your mouth. And you'll realize that when you go Om, that's the sound you're making. Adonai. Do you see? It is the Om sound. So the Adonai is the Om, but the Om only resonates when you close your mouth, and then it hums through your skull and resonates in that same frequency. So it literally goes from G minor to G flat, or the other way around, from G flat to G minor. But both of those resonate. One to your ears comes in as the G flat and then resonates in your head as G minor, and the other one resonates through your skull from your own vocal cords as G minor. It's the perfect sound in the universe, and that's why they took everything away from that and said we have to tune all of our instruments to C, because C is a half of octave above G. It goes G minor, G major, C minor. That's the scale. So when you have C, that's why they called that, if you look that up and Google it, they call C the frequency of the devil, because it's the anti-frequency to the G. Everything, all your instruments should be tuned to G, not C. And it shouldn't be G flat. Although it should be G flat because when it goes in your ear, it resonates as a G minor. So you hear it as G, but then when it gets into your head, it resonates as a G minor. It drops down that one octave or half an octave into G minor, which is the perfect sound, the perfect pitch. But the sound that's in the sound waves in the air is a half an octave above that until it reaches the ear and goes into your head, into your skull. That's kind of crazy to think about. So that's why Adonai sounds to you. Why do I know that sound? Because it's the Om, but you only hear the Om when someone goes Om, and then you hear that. But if I open my mouth like I just did, you see it's actually the same sound. One is resonating through my skull, and it's changing the frequency by half an octave, lowering it, the vibration. You hear it even as a G minor. But if I open my mouth, that's the sound I'm making, is the G flat. Adonai. Try it yourself. You're not changing the tone. If you were able to have a tone meter, you would literally, as you were listening to it, and put it in front of your mouth, and it would literally go from G flat to G minor to G flat to G minor, depending on whether it's vibrating through your skull or not, or only through your vocal cords. So it does change, but it only changes because it resonates through your skull. Our skull resonates that sound, lowers the octave into a perfect harmonic pitch that actually vibrates our entire skull. And that actually starts tuning up our skull, and it actually starts vibrating and literally starts enlightening our brain cells from that sound. That's why that is the perfect sound to meditate to. And that's why when you hear it, that frequency, you should look up what the frequency of Om is. And I don't remember what it is. And if Peter was here from Ireland, he would be able to tell me exactly what the frequency is because he has all that memorized. Right. Well, you could. That's a good question. Posted. Can you hear yourself speaking without physically speaking? If you're able to do like keep your mouth closed and then talk, right? But even then, you're always hearing yourself through your skull, resonating through your skull into your ears. Just like when I talk, I hear myself coming around through my ears through the sound, but I also hear the vibration through here. So you can't hear it. So that's a good trick question, Bo, because it's almost impossible for you to hear yourself. I can't hear what you hear. I have to play back myself because and it's just like yourself. If you talk, you hear yourself and think your voice sounds a certain way until you record it and play it back and go, I don't sound like that. But you do sound like that. But because you hear everything that you say from these vocal cords, which are down here in your neck, it vibrates through your skull and comes out through the mouth. So you're getting both. That's why when we say different things, they resonate when we do it. That's why saying Om or holding the Adonai, holding that will still start to resonate through our skull because everything that we do vibrates through our skull. So you cannot, to answer your question, it was a trick question, it was a good one. You cannot hear yourself without speaking unless you hear yourself on recording. And then you hear what other people hear only. You don't hear your own resonance as well. I remember one of the first memories of my father was hearing his voice while I was not out with my ears. I was hearing my father's voice when I was in the womb, and I have memory of that. So I was hearing my father's voice through the embryonic fluid and through the vibration of my mother's stomach. So when I was a baby and my father had me laying on his chest and he spoke, that bonded me to him because me being on his body with my ear and my body on his body and him speaking, the vibration was soothing to me because the sound now was resonating the same way my father's voice was resonating when I was in the womb. I was aware of that as a baby because I was unveiled. Okay. So I was aware of how comforting my father's vibrational voice through his vibrating body sounded to me in my head because that's what I heard when I was in the womb before I knew what my father looked like. And then when I came out of the womb and my father was holding me, and I remember I was laying on him, he was laying back and had me laying on his chest, and he was talking to people, and I was laying there. That was so soothing to me because It was how my first introduction to my father's voice sounded and felt. It was a vibration, and there was no me seeing my father. So I wasn't hearing him from the outside until I was outside. And then I heard him differently than I did when I was in the womb. So when I was pressed up against his body and speaking, that's why they first put you onto your mother's chest, because that's how you hear your mother. So you bond to your parents by the touch of them putting you on their chest and holding you while they talk, because that's what you heard for 9 months in development. And then you start associating what you're hearing in your ears now with what the vibration that you're feeling. And that's why you always want to hug somebody, because you want to feel that vibration, because that's what you were introduced. You want to hug your mom, you want to hug your dad, and then you want to hug other people because you're feeling them now, the vibration of their heart and the vibration of them, as well as hearing that. You can feel them, you can smell them. And that's the bonding mechanism of family. It's because when you were in the womb, that's how you heard your mother's voice. It's how you heard your father's voice. It's how you heard any siblings that were born before you, was through the vibration sound waves penetrating and the density of the embryonic fluid. And then when you're on someone's body, pressed up against them, especially as a little baby, and babies are almost always turned on one ear or the other, because you don't want your face planted in the body. So you're always turn your head. And have you ever taken your hand and put it over your ear? That's how, Bo, you could hear your voice more by putting your hand up on your ear to cover your ear through the vibration. And then if you put your voice, your hand up cupped like this and speak, that's why singers used to do that, to hear themselves sing before they have what they call in-ears that they put on now to hear their own voice. So they could find out if they were on pitch. People would put their hand like this, and you can hear your voice more through sound. And if you use both of your hands, then you hear less of the vibration and hear more of what other people hear you sounding like. So if you're laying on somebody's body like this, you hear more of the vibration resonating through your skull and your body. That was a great question, Bo. It was a good trick question, right? Can you hear yourself? I'm going to put that up on the screen. Can you hear yourself speak without physically speaking? No, unless you hear a recording of yourself. Then you can. That's the only way that you can do that. So yes, only if you hear a recording played back to yourself, then you can hear yourself without saying any words. But you can't. Otherwise, you'd have to make the sounds of the words with your mouth closed, which you can do. I perfected that because when I was doing spy stuff, gangster shit, I didn't want to have people looking with binoculars and reading my lips. So I learned to talk with my mouth closed as much as I could, like a ventriloquist. So you could sit like this, and it doesn't take long until you just sit here and your mouth doesn't move much. And you can sit there, and ventriloquists learn to do that with a microphone up close to their mouth. And they get really good at not moving their lips and talking the same way. And you have to learn where to place your tongue to say words that you would with your mouth moving without your mouth moving. But I got really good at sitting and talking. And that's why people put their hand over their mouth, like in baseball, so you can't see their lips, put their mitt up so you can't see what they're saying, so you can't read their lips. Well, we would do that without, because if you do this, it's obvious that you're talking to somebody. You don't want someone to see what you're saying. So if you want to get away with talking to somebody, you just look at them. And if you have your mouth open just a little teeny bit, which when you have a mustache like mine, it's hard to tell whether your mouth's open. You look like you're just sitting here looking around at the world and you're having a full-on conversation with the guy next to you. People do that in prisons too. You learn this stuff in spycraft to learn to talk to somebody without moving your lips, so nobody sees that. They have to be listening device, and then they can't tell who's saying what unless they know your voice and they're recording that. And if they're not, and people are just walking by, they can't tell who's talking. If anyone is, somebody's just saying something, I don't know what you're talking about. You see? But if you have cops looking at you with binoculars, you're not moving your mouth. They can't go, he's saying blah, blah, blah. We're filming him and having linguists tell us what lip readers tell us what he's saying. Anybody that's hard of hearing watches people's mouths. They can tell what you're saying without hearing you. Okay. Rick said, I'll be back in 5 minutes. Facebook typos, right? Rick was bouncing for some reason. He'll be back. He's getting up. It's a Saturday. I don't know if he's working over there. He's over in Uluru now, working in Uluru. Okay, so Monday, just to reiterate, this Monday, today's Friday here in the United States and California, Saturday if you're in Australia, Monday, my Monday at 1 p.m. West Coast America time, I will be on Project Team Alpha. I will be this guest speaker talking about the Law of One for a 1-hour show on Monday. I'll have the links up on my channels for those of you who want to tune in and hear me speak about the Law of One. And then 2 weeks from tomorrow, which I don't know if it's the 15th or the 16th. I don't have my calendar up. Give me a second. I'll pull that up. We have a workshop that's going to be on. Let me pull that up on my phone so I can read it to you, because it'll be faster than me clicking the link over here and going to something else, going to the same page to find it. But I put it up on my Facebook page, an advertisement. At least I thought I did. Here it is. Let me hit the link here. And I clicked on it and it's not pulling up the link for some reason. Now it is. Okay. So it is the 15th, Saturday, June 15th. And I don't know what time. I think it's the same time. 12 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time to 5 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. The link is on my page. A workshop that is entitled Embracing Your Divine Self. I will not be one of the speakers on that, but I will be speaking in between the speakers. I'm working with Aaron Fowler and his wife. Oh God, I just said her name and now Rasmussen. What's her first name? Jesus, I apologize. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on her name right now. Norma. I can't believe I drew a blank. Don't tell her I did that. She'll get mad at me and give me a hard time. Norma Rasmussen, Aaron Fowler, and myself will be hosting and co-hosting together. And there are speakers that are going to be on there. And we put out a flyer that said that, and I don't see it here, who the speakers are on this thing. We had one up before, and I don't know what we did with it. It's on my page. Just got to scroll down and find it from last week. And we'll be talking in between the presenters that will be working with you in this workshop that'll be on the 15th of June. And that'll be about a 5-hour show. And we will have, at the end, everybody will be on a panel to discuss everything from the day, just like we do with all of our things that we put together. So that's going to be cool. You guys might want to tune into that. That's a paid workshop. And I think it just said $10 for the tickets for that. So we'll be promoting that, and I'll have a banner up. I was going to do it today, but I was in a hurry running around doing stuff, and I couldn't get the banner up in time, and I apologize for that. Not having the banner up so you can see, but if you go to my page, it's on my page, and you can click on that, and you can be a part of that. And it is in 2 weeks. We had originally scheduled it for tomorrow, the workshop that is, and we won't be on there. We had to postpone for 2 weeks. So it'll be on June 15th instead of tomorrow. And again, like I said, if you guys want to tune in and see me talk on Project Team Alpha, 1 p.m. West Coast America time, Monday, my Monday, GMT -7, UK -8. So wherever you are in the world, I'm sure you can figure it out from there, from those 3 time zones. I'll be on Project Team Alpha for a 1-hour show with Augie Nost and Nora, and I always forget her last name, Nora Love. How is that I could forget that last name? So I believe it's still the 2 of them doing the show. All right, guys. I love you guys. That we finished that session. So we'll start the next session next Friday and go from there. And if you guys have any last minute questions, ask them. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and get off of here for the night, for the weekend. Relax. I got family coming over tomorrow. Sit down for a bit with my feet up before I got to cook some dinner for Mom and I. Right? My mother will be 80 years old on the 5th. So tomorrow's the 1st. So 5 days from today, my mother will turn 80. That's going to be cool. She won't remember it. She doesn't know it. She has dementia, but I think she's still in there enough to where if I said happy birthday to her, she'd get it. All right, guys. I love you guys. Have a great night. Stephanie, hi, by the way. Stephanie popped in. Yo! Yeah, Stephanie, hi. So this has been Orion Rising. I am your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Reese, I didn't say hello to you. I saw you earlier, and I said I was going to say hello in my brain, and I was talking raw, and I never said hello. Reese, welcome, brother, down there in Australia. I love watching Reese when he posts the stuff because he does target shooting. He dressed up in the cowboy outfit, and I love when you post that stuff, by the way, Reese, because I love watching you pow, 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 doing any of that stuff because I was born in America, so that kind of stuff. The culture of Australia and America, we have the same background culture with the cowboy hats and the whole leathers and the cowboy boots and the whole nines. And you do all that. I've seen you do that. And one thing, so hard on yourself. There was that one episode you posted where you were shooting and you said, I forgot to know how to do this or that. And I was like, dude, that's better than I would have done. You were doing good. So yeah, keep that stuff coming, bro. He does that and he's really good at it. Apparently he makes a lot of money. I don't know if he makes a lot of money, but I know that he's kind of famous in Australia for doing that Old West style target shooting and stuff. So that's kind of badass, right? And I love when you play the sound, because most people, when they watch movies, they think that these gunshots are like cannons. And if you guys watch any of Reese's videos where he actually shows himself firing a gun with bullets coming out of it, target shooting, you would be surprised that the sound is you would be like, what is that, a caps? That's not even a real gun. No, that's what real guns sound like. They don't sound like that stuff that you hear in the movies where the guy takes a 38 and fires the 38 and it sounds like a nuclear explosion goes off every time he pulls the trigger. The truth is, most people, when they hear actual gunshots, they go, I thought it was just firecrackers, because they don't sound much more than a firecracker sound in real life, unless you're standing next and holding the gun. Then it's a little loud in your ears. I remember the loudest thing I ever heard was my father. He had a 308 Alpine, which was a really cool sniper rifle until they started using 50 cal. I think it was a 35 cal. I don't remember if it was 50 cal. They had big shells. And so I know it was like a 30-06 or I think it was a 30-06 shell. So that would be what we would call a 332 or a 557 now. Right. And Reese, you'd have to give me the direct on that. It's been a while since I thought about it, but I think it's the same as is one of the UN bullets, the 332 or the 557, which is what we called 30-06 here in America before that. But you would be able to tell me, probably answer that right now. But my father, when I was a kid, went out to the firing range, and I didn't have any ear protection on. My father didn't realize that I didn't. He thought I picked them up and put them on. He was looking at the target. He had them on in goggles, and he fired that thing, and it was so loud I thought I went deaf. It was just explosion that was super loud, because I was literally only a foot or two away from my father when he fired it down range. And I screamed to put my hands up, and he looked at me and he was, oh my God, I can't believe that you didn't put these on. And he put them on, and I was now still scared. And he was like, go sit in the car, man. And finally he fired it, and I had the earmuffs on, and it didn't hurt as much. It was still, shocking to me, because I was like 4 or 5 when he did it. But he told me to put them on, and he thought I did. And I guess I put them up and then pulled them down and didn't hold them up to my ears, And he fired the gun, and that was the last time I ever did that. I had those on. So that was the loudest rifle, shot that I had ever heard, was that. When I was a kid, 308 Alpine. And like I said, I think it's a 30-06 round, which is a 332 or a 5, one of those 5.52 or 3. It's whatever the UN uses now. So you could probably tell me what the UN uses. I don't remember anymore. It's been a while since I had to think about that kind of stuff. Okay, so Reese, welcome again. Like I said, hello and goodbye. So this has been Orion Rising. I'm your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you're tuning into this show. All right, guys, have a great night. I love you guys. I'll see you guys either Monday on Project Team Alpha, or I'll see you guys next Friday or on the workshop, or if you guys are in the Law of One chat on Messenger, I'll probably see you in that after the show's over. All right, guys, have a great night.